Welcome to the Tima Ballers podcast. Now, the first thing that probably comes to your mind right now is, what is this? Like, it's some random guy called Tima Baller talking about football. Like, what is this? Well, I want to essentially show the fan view on things. I want this podcast to be a place where you can hear the sentiment of fans. I'm going to at least try to capture the sentiment of other fans, my own opinion, and take a unique and new approach on the big topics, on the Premier League, on transfers, on matches. And it's essentially, I want this podcast to be for everyone. Even if you don't really watch football, I am not going to go into very detailed stats, into sophisticated tactical analysis. No, that's not what this podcast is about. I am myself, I'm not expert. I'm not a football guru. I'm not ex-player. I mean, I hope I was. Maybe then I would have enough money to, be doing something even more interesting. But yeah, I am just a fan. I'm just a fan giving my opinion on football because ultimately, football is what I love. It's a phenomenal and glorious sport. I want to spread the joy of football and talk about why I like this sport and what there's so many interesting things in this. It's truly a fantastic sport. So I hope to convey that interest of football in these podcast episodes and talk about the big topics, talk about the interesting details. And briefly about myself, I am Tima. I'm 21 years old. I study in university. I support Liverpool and Reading FC. And as I said, I'm no football expert, no guru. I've only really known football properly for a few years. So what you're really getting is the simple and straightforward view on things. It's a podcast for everyone. You don't even have to really watch football that much. I'm just giving my thoughts in a very simple way so everybody can understand this is a fan view on football. And I have no vested interests. I don't have any sponsorship deals. I don't have any commercial interests. I'm just a fan. Just like the vast majority of you, I would assume. I'm just a fan commenting on football. Now, obviously, let's get into the actual kind of, football content. But before I do that, briefly as to why this episode is coming out a bit later is because I've been ill and I lost my voice. And, well, unless you wanted to listen to General Grievous ranting about football, which is not the case, that's why I have now waited until I have regained my voice and ready, excited and thrilled to start the Premier League, to start the podcast and get the party started. So let's first begin with the Premier League. And obviously, this recording is as of 16 August before the Man United Fulham game. It will come out a bit later. But what I'm trying to essentially do is let's take a look at the Premier League. Let's take a look at what's going to happen really. Because obviously we've had the summer transfer window. We've had a couple months of a very, 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 very boring transfer window. It's been very boring. It's been very flat. Obviously, the reasons being the Euros, players delayed, international, but also FFP, clubs spend to buy, clubs not wanting to really spend that much money. They have to be careful. Now, let's take a look at what's really been going on. So let's start with Arsenal. Obviously, we know that last season was a thrilling, captivating title race, where Arsenal fell short by only 2 points. Only 2 points, it really is nothing. It's like one goal could have really changed that. And the question is, what have Arsenal done to rectify this? Well, the first major problem for Arsenal was the fact that Gabriel Saliba, best centre-back partnership in the Premier League in my opinion, and there's no one in backup. Alright, the next one in line is indeed Rob Holding. Now, no, of course, Rob Holding, I'm sure he's a good player, but Arsenal needed to step up their game, and they did. They signed Riccardo Calafiori, the well-known Italian international from Bologna for £42 million. It's a good signing. It's actually a good signing. It's a signing designed, I would assume, to be both a starting and on backup. Obviously, I think any top team really needs to have at least 3 proper centre-backs because ultimately you want to be rotating those centre-backs. You don't just want to spam Gabriel Saliba starting every single time. You do really want to be having a rotation system. So that's why I think Riccardo Calafiori, very solid signing. And then also Arsenal are looking into another player, a midfielder called Mikel Merino. And I think rumoured to be apparently a 17 or 18 million pound deal. Again, adding squad depth, obviously Arsenal they're a fantastic team. They've got a brilliant starting lineup. Really, they do. They've got some phenomenal top class talents. I think based on just purely the starting 11, Arsenal probably give City the run for the money. But then when we come to the reserves, that's when the question is asked of Arsenal because they really don't have that many backup. You look at Partey, Rice, Odegaard is a phenomenal midfield. But then in backup, you've got Fabio Vieira and Jorginho. And potentially Havertz, who realistically should never be playing in midfield anyways. So the problem for Arsenal was the lack of backup. And Mikel Merino, again, good player, solid, experienced, 28 years old. So he's a good signing. Also budget signing. Arsenal they have to be mindful of FFP. They can't just spend like crazy. But then kind of a nice segue into the next club is obviously Emil Smith-Rowe going to Fulham. And obviously I think that's an interesting signing for Fulham. He's an experienced player, £34 million to Fulham, Emil Smith-Rowe. Arsenal, well, the Arsenal fans obviously really like him, but he has to be moved on. Not really part of Arteta's plans as such. Also, moving on to another club who was also actually involved in kind of the top end of the business in the Premier League is Aston Villa, who have actually signed Amadou Onana. It's a proper signing, £50 million from Everton. And also Ian Maatsen from Chelsea for £37.5 million. Very interesting. Two good signings, two very solid players. But unfortunately, they had to sell Douglas Luiz for £21 million as part of it was quite an interesting deal with Juventus, which involved swapping some players and some additional money. So Aston Villa looked to be reinforcing their ranks, but ultimately, we will ask the big question, you moved on Douglas Luiz, who arguably is your second best player last season, who was one of your most important players. So obviously, what could happen with that? Then we can talk about Tottenham, who have signed Dominic Solanke as well as Archie Gray. Archie Gray was apparently £30 million, and then Dominic Solanke was £65 million. Obviously, Solanke, former Liverpool player, but he has had an absolutely phenomenal season in last year. 19 goals. Very, very, very solid. Very, very good stuff by Dominic Solanke. And ultimately, that has warranted this top move to Tottenham. And Tottenham, perhaps, they need to have a clinical striker who will score lots of goals. Any proper team needs a proper striker. It's always very hard to do without a proper striker. Obviously, Liverpool for many years we had Roberto Firmino, who was a very different kind of player. But the standard way about football is really go for a clinical number 9. So Solanke is a very interesting move. Then obviously with Liverpool, I can get really angry here about how we've made no signings, how we've been absolutely humiliated with Martin Zubimendi, how we've absolutely done nothing, literally nothing to sign anyone, which is frustrating. But ultimately, Slot wants to assess the squad. We've had players returning, some quite late, so I sort of want to believe in this narrative that we're just being careful, although I would probably write it down to lack of planning and just not wanting to sign players who are too expensive. It's interesting how we say alright, so we can't sign people like Andre because apparently he's not good enough, but then we can't sign someone like Caicedo because he was too expensive. So interesting, very interesting dynamic with that. Next, we move on to also Chelsea, who've they've been spending like crazy. Don't know how they do it. Honestly, somebody, financial analyst, please tell me how on earth have Chelsea spent £1.2 billion? Pedro Neto, £54 million. Omari Kelman from Aston Villa, £90 million. Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, £30 million. Mark Gui, £5 million, and more. That's not even the whole list. They just keep on spending, don't they? They're collecting players like Pokemons. Chelsea are just Chelsea, what are you doing? Seriously, Chelsea, what are you doing, guys? How many players do they have now in the squad? 45? Yeah, that's absolutely wild, absolutely crazy. I don't understand how they ever going to fit all those players. You've got 5 keepers, nobody's good enough. You've now got an army of centre backs, most of which are young, unproven talents like Badiashile and Dizazi, and even Colwell, who's quite young. But you've brought in Tosin for free, so that's probably the only bit of reasonable business they've done. Now you've got the whole dynamic with Conor Gallagher and the saga of how he basically can't get into Atletico Madrid You got all these talks with Joao Felix, which is crazy to think that they already have Christopher Nkunku and Nicholas Jackson, two strikers. You also got some guy called Mark Gui. I mean, sorry if I'm pronouncing completely wrong, by the way, but this guy from youngster from Barcelona, and now even Joao Felix. I don't understand. Is there any thinking done? How are you gonna fit these players in? You've already got Sterling, who is on £325,000 a week. You got Mudryk, the £88 million guy from Shakhtar Donetsk, who is scored less than 10 goals in all his time at Chelsea. So yeah, very, very hard to understand what Chelsea are doing. Ultimately, it is very much a gamble on the fact that these are young talents who you would expect to appreciate. But I guess, if you take a finance view on things, you think, all right, I sign a young player. He's like an asset, like a stock, which can go up in price, and I will sell him for a higher price. Unfortunately, that's not really how football works, does it? Right? Not every single young player will indeed become more expensive. Not every single young player will become even proven. A lot of young players will just be players, and they will probably depreciate in value. So the strategy is questionable, to say the least. Manchester City, strangely, have been the sleeping giant in this transfer window. They've only signed Savio from Troyes for £33.6 million. Interesting, good signing, solid player, but Alvarez, £82 million transfer to Atletico Madrid. They really got a good deal on that, haven't they, Man City? And now, I would assume they can just open the war chest and and just spend. Really, just spend a lot they can. So I'm curious to see what will they do. Apparently, Oscar Bob got injured, so I'm thinking that Man City will really up the spend, and they can. Obviously, they've got the revenue, they've got the income, they're FFP compliant now, so they can just unleash the beast and spend, I guess. Manchester United, much to Liverpool fans' frustrations, obviously, have done pretty well. Honestly, they've done pretty well. Lenny Yoro from Lille, £58.9 million, solid signing, young talent, future prospect. Joshua Zirkzee from Bologna for £36.5 million. Also, Matthijs de Ligt and Nusra Mazraoui from Bayern. I would expect to see some of these guys tonight. Manchester United, obviously, they've changed their approach of transfers. They've gone from just going for these big, expensive players like Antony and Casemiro and Sancho to now trying to actually think through a plan and buy the right players who will bring you that stability, because obviously defensively they're very, very struggling. They've let go of Varane and they need to get a backup. So Matthijs de Ligt, proven talent, he was a really, really very talented player. You may ask the question, is it the best idea to sign a player who really hasn't really shown at Bayern recently? There was a time when he was phenomenal, and then he just kind of fizzled out a little bit. So is that really the best idea? Perhaps. It's a good price. Obviously, Lenny Yoro is injured, but he's a future talent. He's not a signing for 1 year. He's a long-term project. And ultimately, I think perhaps one day he goes to Real Madrid and Man United get like £80 million for him. Maybe. But then other than that, Wolves have been doing some phenomenal business, picking up Chrysenko Somerville, Niklas Füllkrug, Max Kilman, and Aaron Wan-Bissaka, as well as others. They've clearly gone out and used their rice money very wisely. They got themselves a proven goal scorer in Niklas Füllkrug, Champions League finalist. They also got Max Kilman, very, very solid defender from Wolves, former captain of Wolves. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, again, you're bringing experience. You want to get that elite team experience, like that knowledge of how to play the top level. And a very, 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 very promising player in the face of Somerville, who actually scored the winner at Anfield in that 22-23 season against us. That was a very interesting game. And yeah, he's a very, very talented player, had a fantastic season last year at Leeds. Unfortunately, Leeds did not get promoted, and ultimately he has chosen to move on. So far, as we can see, the transfer window hasn't been that interesting. Some of the highlights is also Fabio Carvalho to Brentford for a deal that could be worth up to £27.5 million from Liverpool. We signed him for around £5 million from Fulham when they got promoted, and yeah, he's not really had the biggest impact. He played for 1 season, then he got loaned out twice, and yeah, obviously as a Liverpool fan, I'm quite satisfied to get the profit. He had a good preseason, which probably is the reason why Brentford were even more impressed by him. Then we can also talk about another thing, Joao. Yeah, Joao indeed. Fulham are in trouble. They're arguably one of the best defensive midfielders in the Premier League. Moving on, I wonder to see how they will cope today without him. But now let's move on to the future. We've looked at the transfer window. We've seen roughly what's going on. We've covered that. Now let's really get into what do I expect. Now, my predictions are just predictions, all right? I didn't put that much thought into it, as in I didn't do a whole massive research, trying to research every single player, doing a massive tactical analysis. No. I just sat down, had a think, had a look, thought about it for a week or two, and I've come up with that. Well, I mean, I hope these are spoilers. I hope these are going to be the exact, or actually, I hope this will not be correct, because I do have Manchester City as champions. I'm taking away all the bias and impartiality. As much as I would love to see Liverpool winning the Premier League, right, it would be a miracle. It would be Slot's miracle if we did it. But I'm also being realistic that I don't think we will win the Premier League. I think our transfer window hasn't been exciting enough. I think that the players are excellent, but I look at Man City, I look at Pep Guardiola, I look at that squad, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think we're winning. So City champions, I've put Liverpool in second place, which many people will find unbelievable. And actually, this is the first kind of controversial topic I want to get to, right? So the mainstream media, so TalkSport, a lot of these media channels, all the people there are adamant for some reason that Liverpool cannot be in a title race. Liverpool cannot finish second. Why? Really? Why can't we finish second? Do we have a worse team than Arsenal? Trent Alexander-Arnold, Virgil van Dijk, Mo Salah, Dominic Szoboszlai, Alexis McAllister, Andrew Robertson, Diego Jota? Have we forgotten about all these players? They're still there, and the team is getting better and better. We've got all these young talents in the form of Harvey Elliott, Jero Quansah, Curtis Jones. I mean, you're telling me that's not important. And then we look at Arne Slot, who has been a phenomenal manager in the Eredivisie. And another thing I don't like is I don't like this mentality of looking down to other leagues. Like, let's not pretend like the Eredivisie is irrelevant. It's not irrelevant. And what he did at Feyenoord is phenomenal. To take a team with limited financial abilities, to take it with so little spend to the very top and win and beat Ajax is massive. Don't get me wrong. It's massive. Winning the league, winning the cup is very impressive. It's a very big achievement. In no way, shape or form do I think it's irrelevant. It is very relevant. And ultimately, I don't really understand what is on Arteta's CV. One FA Cup, lots of second place finishes. All right, fair enough. He's done a great job to take the club upwards. But let's not pretend like Arne Slot is a nobody. He very much is a decent manager with a good CV, with trophies. You know, they've tangible trophies and tangible achievements. So I think I would not discount Liverpool. I think the reason why I'm going Liverpool second mainly is because I think we've got a way better squad. The squad depth is way better. You look at Arsenal, they're very thin. You know, one injury to Saka, you got no backup. Odegaard, no backup. Rice, no backup. Gabriel Saliba, again, now they've got Ricardo Calafiori. Ben White, again, difficult to find backup. Whereas Liverpool, you take away our entire first team, you bring on the second team, you've still got the likes of Cody Gakpo, Darwin Núñez, Harvey Elliott, Curtis Jones, Ryan Gravenberch, Jero Quansah. Phenomenal talents. So in no way, shape or form do I think that we're not good enough. I think we are good enough. So hence why I'm going second. And also I think that Arsenal, 2 seasons, title chasing, it is exhausting, you know. It's exhausting. We felt that in 2022 when you keep chasing and you don't get what you want, it does take a toll on the players. It does. And for Arsenal, you know, these players need to get used to the pressure of playing Champions League, Premier League, Cups. I think Arsenal might just begin to get tired. I really think, you know, doing the chasing is not easy. It is mentally and physically and emotionally draining. So I really think that it will take the toll on Arsenal. Hence why I put Arsenal in third. In fourth, to top up our top 4, we've got Tottenham Hotspur, who I think are a good team. Really, I think they're a good team. I think they're kind of forgotten. They're always written off. But look, they've done good business. They brought in a promising youngster, Archie Gray. They've now got proper number 9s. They've got 2 good strikers, Richarlison and Solanke. They've got Heung-min Son, who's obviously a great goal scorer. They've got Kulusevski. They even secured Timo Werner, who should be their backup. Then we look at the fact that they've got a very solid defense, as in the actual defense isn't very solid, but the defense players are good. Obviously, Pedro Porro, Destiny Ndogi, very good fullbacks. Then I think Mickey van de Ven, who is absolutely top class. I think one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League. Not top 3, but I would probably put him in the conversation for top 10. And perhaps even some people could say top 5. His recovery pace, he can score goals. I went to the game Spurs-Burnley where Spurs won 2-1, and the goal he scored was fantastic. That really was a top-class goal, and I think when players have the ability to do something out of their position, again, it's a massive credit. So I think Tottenham are a solid team. They've got a good manager who is a winner. He knows how to win. And ultimately, I think that Spurs are a team who are closer to being a complete team. They've undergone this kind of refurbishment. They've offloaded some players like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg and Emerson Royal. And now they're actually solidifying what they will call handball and bring that team forward. So I think Spurs are ahead in that sense in front of United and Chelsea, who I still think are quite in the earlier stages of the rebuild. Then I put Aston Villa Manchester United at 5th. Now, I think Man United have done very well in the transfer window. I was very skeptical of them going into the season, but they've done well. Really, I think Ineos have turned a corner. They've proved that they are something, that they are doing things, they're doing things better. They aren't splashing cash like crazy anymore, and it seems they're being reasonable. And I think centre-back wise, Yoro, De Ligt, Martinez, very solid. Obviously, Yoro, I would assume when he comes back in 3 months' time, I think he's a great signing. You've also got Mazraoui, who, again, he's not a top-class player, but he's a good, I wouldn't call him a stopgap, but I think that, obviously, Luke Shaw not being fit, I would assume he gets a lot of minutes. He's a proven player. He's played at the top level, Champions League proven as well, played for Bayern quite a lot. So I think Man United, they really have something, and they've got a lot of talent, Mainu, Garnacho. So I think the combination of all that, plus I think Ten Hag is not a bad coach. I think he's a decent manager. He knows how to get the best out of his players. We've seen that in the FA Cup. He can really string a phenomenal series of performances. The problem is consistency, something they've not had in the entire of the Ten Hag reign. They've gone from quadruple charges to 7-0. Yeah, of course I've got to get that in, 7-0. But yeah, on a more serious note, yeah, they've been very inconsistent. They've always oscillated from lows like losing 3-0 at home to Bournemouth, to then beating Aston Villa with a remarkable comeback, to then almost getting knocked out by Coventry, and then beating Man City, the champions. It's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. The way they go from phenomenal to great to absolutely terrible in the space of weeks. Phenomenal. But I put them in 5th. Villa I will put in 6th. So Aston Villa in 6th to top up, to completely finish the top 6. The reason why I put Villa there, I think, the pressure of the Champions League is very, very tough. We've got more games now. It's even more pressure. I don't think it'll be a repeat of the Newcastle story, because I think Villa are a better built team. They've got proven manager. They've got more proven players. But ultimately, I look at Douglas Luiz, that key player in midfield he's missing. I look at the fact that you don't really have that much squad cover in certain areas like striker. But ultimately, I think the Champions League is a massive demand, which I think will put pressure on Villa. So I still have them 6th. I still have them in a very respectable position. It's just that it'll be very, very hard to cope with all the pressure, because they will want to do well in the Champions League. They can't show up to the Champions League and then absolutely fail it and finish like last place. They're going to have to put some effort into it. 7th place, I put Newcastle. I mean, look, good team, good manager, good players. Isak's phenomenal. Hope Gordon comes to Liverpool, but I just think that they've eclipsed, their peak has already passed. I think it's tough for them. A lot of the players like Sean Longstaff, Dan Burn, I can't really say they're top class, and it's difficult for them to spend. Then I put West Ham in 8th, above Chelsea in 9th. The reason being is I think that West Ham have done brilliantly in the transfer window. They've got a proper manager, so I don't really see any reason why West Ham shouldn't finish above Chelsea. because they've got now proper players, proven players, a team that works, whereas Chelsea is completely disjointed. They've got a squad which is so big, I've got no idea how they'll even bring them every day. There'll not be enough there are not enough seats probably in the whole stands to fit all these players. And they're also inexperienced. Centre-back, you've got Badiashile, you've got Fafana, you've got Dizazi, none of which are proven proper centre-backs. Proper centre-backs, I mean Kanate, I mean Van der Ven, that kind of level. They don't really have anyone, so that's a problem. No leadership at the back either. Thiago Silva has left. Chalobah, your best defender probably, has also left. Conor Gallagher has left. He's a leader. So I think there'll be a sense of disjointedness around Chelsea. And ultimately, I don't really believe that much in Enzo Maresca. I think that he's a decent coach. I think he's a good manager, as in like he's done good stuff. But look, he went to Parma, he failed there, went to Leicester, which was a tap-in, realistically, and even Leicester fans weren't that happy with him at some points in the season. So I don't think getting promoted with Leicester is a massive achievement. And ultimately, I don't think being Pep's assistant is really something that automatically gives you the Chelsea job. I look at Pochettino, proven manager, Premier League. I mean, he won something perhaps, not with Spurs, but look, he's a proven manager, whereas Enzo Maresca is not. It's a massive downgrade, and you're restarting everything again. You have to start rebuilding, retraining, and now you've got all sorts of problems off the field as well with Enzo Fernandez. That's the story to sort out. Will they be able to bring peace to that dressing room and ensure it sticks? Because right now I see a disjointed team with players probably quite unhappy because someone like Sterling comes in, he's going to be on the bench, he's not happy, he's on £325,000 a week. Lukaku, you got no idea what's going on there, should be going to Napoli. But then you've also got Nesso signing in. What will Mudryk? What will Mudryk do? Like, what will Jackson do? It's almost like you've got, because so many managers signed so many players, how are you going to sort out the whole squad? It's a bit of a mess. Crystal Palace are put in 10th, Brentford in 11th, Wolves in 12th, Everton in 13th, Brighton 14th, Fulham 15th, Bournemouth 16th, Leicester 17th, Ipswich Town 18th, Nottingham Forest 19th, and Southampton 20th. Reason being, don't know why I put Brentford so high. I just felt like if Tony stays, they're a very good team, proper manager, they know how to do business, they've done it before, they've finished high up before. I think Wolves with Gary O'Neill, look, Gary O'Neill's a phenomenal manager, absolutely brilliant, no wonder he was interviewed for the Liverpool job. I think Everton will do well. I think Sean Dyche knows what he's doing, he's a proper manager. They have a style, they have a system, they've got some brilliant centre-backs, fantastic defence, and one of the best keepers in the Premier League, Jordan Pickford. So yeah, I think Everton will have a good season, hopefully without any points penalties, because ultimately, look, nobody wants points penalties. We want to see football, we want to see proper sport. We don't want to see point penalties and all that kind of stuff. That distracts from the football. I put Brighton in 14th because I think haven't really been able to find their form after that fantastic finish in 6th. They've lost some key players like Pascal Robe. I think their new manager, very young, not proven, big risk. It's a big risk. They could finish even lower perhaps. I'm just going for a more optimistic figure because realistically, if this young guy doesn't work out, you're in some serious trouble. Fulham in 15th, I think, not having that destroyer in Palini is a problem. He was crucial in terms of defending, tackles, pretty sure he made the most tackles in the Premier League for 2 seasons in a row, which is quite phenomenal. And then Bournemouth in 16th because I think, again, look, not having a top goal scorer is a big issue. And do they have time to rectify in 2 weeks? I don't know. They don't really earn that much money either, so it's not like they're going to be able to really properly spend. I respect Iraola, I respect the club, and I think they'll have an alright season. 16th place. Leicester I put in 17th, just about. Premier League experience. They've got some good players. Steve Cooper's a good manager. Ultimately, I think that having that experience on board in the Premier League will be the key thing that I think will get them over the line compared to Ipswich Town, which I put in 18th. I think the whole story of Ipswich Town is phenomenal, but my biggest problem with them is that you play this attacking, creative style of football. You play out from the back. If you come to the Premier League and you do that against a proper team, you will get obliterated. you will get absolutely obliterated. We've seen it with Burnley. So will Kieran McKenna be able to change that in time? I don't know. So because of that kind of problem, I put him in 18th. Nottingham Forest, I think, look, 2 seasons, relegation battles. I don't think the manager's convincing. I think the signings are unconvincing. You've signed so many players for so much money, got into financial trouble. You've moved on some of your best players before. I think there are question marks. They've got some proper talented attackers, Gibbs White, Awoniyi, but ultimately it's not just attack, right? We've seen phenomenal teams get relegated. We've seen Leicester get relegated with Yuri Tillmans, with Jamie Vardy, with James Maddison. We've seen that happen. But ultimately it's about the team sticking together, which I think is difficult because you've got a bit of a disjointedness. I don't think the defence is as solid. I think the midfield needs improvement. So I think with Nottingham Forest, 2 seasons near relegation. Last year was not really convincing. So I think ultimately sacking Steve Cooper did not really solve the problems. Don't think that whole appointment of Nunes Prito de Santo paid off. Southampton, I'm sorry, you're in 20th again. You're in last. Look, a lot of your good players left. You just about made it into the Premier League, but you are the underdogs. You did not finish in first or second in the Championship. You weren't even close. You beat Leeds, fair play. You did very well to do that. But ultimately, you are up against some proper teams. You're up against Bournemouth and Fulham and Brighton and Everton and Wolves, who have all got phenomenal talents and they're worth hundreds of millions of pounds of squad worth. So Southampton, you really do have a point to prove. And so does your manager. I wish them all the best, but I think it'll be a tough season. So overall, that's my predictions. And then player of the season, I put Rodri. I think that it's about time he gets it. Golden Boot is the easy one, Haaland. Underachievers, I put Chelsea because, look, so many people are saying Chelsea top 4, Chelsea top 6. But no, I think Chelsea will finish 9th. And ultimately, finishing below West Ham is by definition underachievement. Overachievers, Liverpool, because for some reason the media has decided Liverpool cannot be second. Like Liverpool has to be maximum third for some reason. Slot will not work. Liverpool will fall apart. Or Klopp left. What do you mean? We've got an elite team, Champions League winners, Premier League winners, Zoboslai, McAllister, young talents. Don't get it. Then obviously the flop and hit transfer I didn't do because the transfer window has been so bad and it's not even finished yet. But looking from what I see right now, it's so hard to judge. It is literally so hard to judge because there just haven't really been that many. Ultimately, if Solanke scores 15 goals for Tottenham and Tottenham finish in the top 4, he will have a good shout. And I think Somerville, very promising player, but we don't know what he's going to do. I would have said Lenny Yoro could have done something phenomenal, but he's now injured for 3 months. So that's a question mark. But yeah, that's my Premier League predictions roundup. Hoping for a phenomenal season. Hoping for some great things ahead with the Premier League. It's exciting, it's thrilling, it's captivating. And yeah, I really do think it will be a good season. I think we will have I think it'll be like a 2-3 horse race. Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Arsenal drop off, Liverpool drop off, Arsenal gain, Liverpool gain. And ultimately, I think City will finish in around, I'd say, 90 points, 89 points. I think Liverpool like 85, 84. And then Arsenal maybe like 83. I think it'll be close. And then probably quite a gap down to Spurs, United, Villa, Newcastle, who I think will all be a bit closer to each other. But I think it's a good season. We've got an interesting season and I look forward to everything. So our next episode I will be recording on Sunday. It'll be with one of my really close friends, Emin, who's an Arsenal fan. And I will be getting the opinion of a fan. As I said, we are all about the fans. So I'm bringing you a fan who actually, ironically, I actually got him into football. So we'll talk about how he got into football, what he thinks of football. We'll talk about Arsenal, because after all, it's a big club, right? Yeah, they are a big club, fair enough. They are. Maybe with the Champions League, but more on that later. But yeah, I really look forward to a fantastic Premier League. And yeah, I'm very, very happy to be recording my podcast. Very, very interesting. I really enjoyed it. Love thinking about football, love talking about football, love watching football. And yeah, I wish everyone all the best. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And yeah, all the best to everyone. Thank you for listening to this podcast. And I hope I wasn't much of a rant.